Right. Karibu sana. It is on Thursday, the hashtag Kama Kaida Relationship Thursday. This is Monica Faith. This is TV47. I'm used to really standing your ring to that one week, on that one day of the week, the weekly dose kukupatia relationship advice. So far, I don't know if you're writing notes. In case you're writing notes, keep writing notes, because this particular morning we are discussing the second wife debate. Kashambi, are you ready?
To be a second wife or to start the show?
Whichever.
I'm not sure what the question is.
For both of them, actually.
I am ready and excited to start the show because of the panel we have.
And not to be a second wife?
I'm not sure I'm willing to go. We'll hear after the show. I'll tell you after the show.
You'll weigh your situations.
Itakuwa ngumu.
Oh, yes. And actually, we have the right ones for this conversation. Ladies first, Wanjiru Kaburu, transformational coach, communication and brand positioning strategist, as well as a corporate MC, and many other hats. Karibu sana.
Thank you so much, Stanley, for having me.
Looking lovely today.
Thank you.
And Chris Atemo.
How are you?
Karibu sana.
Thank you.
Life coach, consultant, as well as a communicator.
Good to be here.
Karibuni. I think I'll start with you, Kaburu. For a woman, what will inform the decision for being a second wife?
I don't know. Never been, not considering to be. But put it that way, I think there are many factors that play into a relationship. I like to say that we are a sum total of our experiences. And for someone to consider being a second wife, it's either they have been exposed to it, probably, or they have been in relationships where they have had their own share of experiences. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you've ever heard someone say, at this point, whatever comes goes. Mm. People are getting so frustrated also in the dating scene, especially in this Nairobi. So many factors will play to it, but I also like to put a gist to it and say, I think everyone should be a second wife, husband to someone in the context of having chosen yourself first. Because I see that a lot of relationship problems are singlehood problems, are personal problems. Mm-hmm. So if you're not able to really have a relationship with yourself, I get so intense and crazy to saying that put a ring on it mm-hmm. and marry yourself first before you think of even getting married or marrying someone. Then it becomes so hard to be a whole unit in a relationship. So when you look at it that way, well, I'm ready to be a second wife to the person that is coming into a life. But if it's a matter of, literally, as a figure of speech is, literally, I don't think so. But they have their reasons, honestly. And you could listen to the stories and understand why someone would consider that. And it could be valid or not. Mm-hmm. But what is inspiring you? What's your motivation towards really saying, I'm going to be second? Because I'm not so sure.
Politically correct. I love it. CJ, are men really naturally polygamous? That is what they tell us.
The most unfair question to be asked. Not so sure that they're naturally polygamous. I think there are a lot of factors that affect how people behave, and that includes the environments that they've been in, socialization, culture, religious beliefs, conditioning over quite a while, because there are people who will be in spaces where they can make those choices to have more than one wife, but they're completely monogamous. So there are certain challenges, of course, that may be physiological for men in certain aspects, but I do not think that they're naturally polygamous. There are many factors that would cause people to get into that kind of a space. Yeah.
Then I'll follow up. Now, what will inform a man to get a second wife?
Well, as I've said, so they're religious beliefs. There are people whose religions will allow them to do that. And so you can't even pull any card on them and tell them they can't. Because if the foundation of their beliefs allows them to do that, then they feel that nothing else really matters. Then there are cultural factors as well. There are spaces where a man was not a man until he had a second or a third wife. So he wouldn't get into certain spaces of leadership if he only had one wife. You still hear those conversations even today in certain spaces where some people would say, Stan cannot talk here because he only has one wife, which means that he doesn't have capacity to take care of several people. So there are those who would do that just to be accepted in society, and probably because they wanted to go higher in the positions of their communities, and they knew that the way the bias was, if they only had one wife, they would be seen either to be weak or to be poor, that they did not have capacity. There are others. If you look at how people would do it in the past, culturally, men used polygamous setups to grow their wealth as well, because the more children and wives they had, the more workforce they had. So when somebody wanted to grow his resource level, then he would bring in the next person, and they would have more people going to the farm, more people going out to rear the cattle and things like that. So it is difficult, though, to pin it to a benevolent thought, that it always comes back to what the man wants to achieve. But there will be factors generally, and depending on the value system of that person, then they may feel that they want to go that direction. Others, it's just a moral issue, like, he can't stay with one woman, and then now he needs to sanitize it. Because they feel they really, really, really now cannot stay with one woman. And somebody else will come in and they feel they have the capacity to take care of the other woman. So they'd want to just sanitize it and say, instead of me having this lady on the side, why don't I just formalize it and have her as a wife? So many factors.
Right. And now the fact that we've opened the lid on this conversation, back at home, you can always be part of this conversation. And normally we always have a gentleman calling. Today I'm curious from the ladies. Ladies, tafuteni credit tupigie simu 0795045864. Call us live and tell us under which circumstances, the very, very unique circumstances, that you would agree to be a second wife. Probably you're the first one, ama uko kwa relationship, and he's probably said, I'd probably want to be. And you're thinking about it. So under which circumstances will you agree to be a second wife? Talk to us on also our social media platforms, at TV47KE, that is on Facebook. Quite a number of comments coming in. We'll be taking a look at them as we continue. But then first, because we've heard from them, so how about we listen from the ladies out there and get to know what they actually say. So Alfayo Kombo, our Kisii correspondent, spoke to a few ladies from Kisii, and this is what they had to say about this conversation.
Circumstances ziko mingi. Kwa majina ni Karioki Dan, mkazi wa Kisii County. Kitu inaweza fanya nioe mke wa pili nikiwa na mali mingi, pesa mingi, nikiwa na shamba kubwa, inaweza fanya nioe bibi wa pili. Secondly, kama nimeoa bibi wa kwanza na ako na kichwa ngumu, at the same time inaweza bidi sisi kama culture yetu inatukubalia kuwa polygamy. So kuna factors mingi zinaweza fanya nioe bibi wa pili. Second, nini ya tatu, ukiwa na bibi kama ni bibi wa kwanza, ukiwa na bibi mmoja upata ameanza kuwa sisi kama wanaume bibi yako kina kichwa ngumu hivi, unamletea wa pili kwa sababu unataka peace of mind. Na wanaume wanataka peace of mind. Mwanaume anatakanga mahali penye anazapata peace of mind. Akiona huyu bibi mkubwa ameanza kuwa na kichwa ngumu, analeta wa pili. Hiyo ndio vitu mingi. Sasa we have many factors zenye zinaweza fanya mwanaume awe bibi wa pili. Na at the same time, kama familia yenu ilikuanga kama baba yako ameoa wanawake wawili ama babu yako ameoa wanawake wawili watatu, hiyo kitu nao inaweza changia mfuate ile mkondo ya wazee wa kitambo, uoe bibi wawili hata watatu kama unaweza, as long as uko na uwezo wa kuwalisha, wasomeshe watoto na mahali penye unaweza kuwaweka. So there are many factors zenye zinaweza fanya uoe bibi wa pili. Na kwanza wako wengi, otherwise sisi wanaume if possible wacha tukubaliwe, kama kuna uwezo wa kuweka wawili hata watatu tusaidie, because wanawake wako wengi kushinda wanaume. So tumekubaliwa, at the same si matatizo yanaweza fanya uoe bibi wa pili. Kama tunaweza, uko na uwezo, wawili watatu wanne watano sita waweke hapo nyumbani, utaweza heshimiwa nao. Hiyo nayo inaweza fanya uheshimiwe. Asante.
Kwa majina yangu naitwa Livingstone Abeba, natoka Bogiaku mkao nini sub location. Kwangu kwa kuoa wake wawili itakuwa shida na ule mwingine kama alikuwa na shida, ndo maana utamwacha ndo uoe wa pili. Shida moja ni maybe atoke kando ya ndoa, kitu wa pili maybe amuelewani, kitu wa tatu maybe anaenda kwao na alikuwa ametaka kuolewa na mtu mwingine hapo hivyo kando. Hiyo ndo maybe itaweza ikafanya shida ndo umwachane kwa hapo.
Natoka Njanya Diego. Sasa mambo kuja kufanya kama huyu kuleta bibi ya pili inakuwa ni kama ile sio mnaelewana, ndio namwambia tufanye hivi anakataa. Sasa ndio tunaangalia mmoja pamoja utaweza kumuelezea, unamwambia pole pole yeye asikie, hata kusabizia nguo inakuwa shida. Sasa kumwambia nitengeneza kama ni chakula hivi anakuwa ni shida. Sasa ndio tunaona kuleta bibi ya pili sasa kuona ni jinsi gani anamletea, ndio sasa aende kumsaidia kazi. Sasa ingine kama ni watoto hapo nyumbani, kama na wachori, kama mama naenda na kuwachia watoto na unamletea huyo mama anakuja kusaidia hiyo watoto. Hiyo ndio tunaona, hiyo ndio chanzo ya kuleta bibi ya pili. Akuja kusaidia watoto kama mama aliwaacha hapo nyumbani, anakuja kuwasaidia kuwasafishia nguo na kwenda shule. Hiyo ndio kitu tunataka kusaidia kama mzee.
Mimi naitwa Elkana Mugaka Nyendieka. Nasema hivi, ile kitu ambayo inazonifanya mimi niweze kuoa bibi ya pili ni ile unanunulia mwanamke zawadi, haipokei vizuri. Unasikia mara hii kala sitaki, kala nini, haipendi. Na ingine ni kwamba ukiingia unajua kwa nyumba ni mbingu ndogo. Alafu ufike kwa nyumba, alafu mwanamke ananage na complain nini kila saa. So hata ukitoka kwa job unasema tena naenda pale hapo. Sasa unataka kukaa nje, lakini ukipata mwanamke mzuri ambaye sasa ukifika kwa nyumba anakupokea vizuri, lazima utafika hapo. Sasa itabidi sasa ulete huyu mwanamke uweke kwa nyumba ndio ukae naye vizuri. Ule ambaye anakukubali kutoka moyoni mwake. Hivyo tu.
Alright.
Yule ambaye anakubali kabisa kukaa moyoni mwako. We'll be getting to hear what the ladies from Kisii are saying on a little bit later on. But Kishambi, the question of the day?
The question of the day is, under which circumstances would you agree to be a second wife? And this goes to the ladies. But let's get your reactions first. Tumesikia mwanamke akiwa kichwa, you know, when if I have money. What else have we had? Kanisa ikikubali. CJ, maybe you'll tell us kama kanisa ukweli inakubali. This kind of situations. But what do you think on Wanjiru as a transformational coach?
Well, I've picked a few things. Like, as you're saying, mwanamke amekuwa kichwa ngumu, hapokelei zawadi vizuri, ana complain. And this would be a question like, is there a guarantee that a number 2, a number 3, a number 4 will do any different? Is there an understanding in that relationship as to why ana complain, as to why they're not receiving gifts, as to why, you know, all these things are happening? So I tend to think that sometimes, or a lot of time, is an escape. We want to run from a situation. You're in a relationship that is a situationship. At the same time, you want to run from what's right there because of what you can observe. Instead of dealing and growing what's there, you run. You know, the grass looks greener. It's not always green. It just looks greener until you're there. So what I would say in terms of as a coach or relationship tip or something like that would be, when you're giving me a gift, for instance, is it my love language? Let's just pick that one thing. Are you giving me gifts and then you're never present? You don't even touch me. You're not proud to go out there and say, hey guys, meet my babe, meet my wife. Yeah. You never ever compliment and say, hey lady, you look so beautiful today. So are you giving me gifts and then ignoring everything else that is what speaks to me as a language? Why am I complaining? Because you say when a woman is complaining all the time, and then again it goes back to what Atema was talking about, there's a cultural also aspect. Are we still in the days where a woman is to be seen? She should not have a voice in the house such that what the man says goes. Otherwise, when ikichangumu. So are we still in those days? Because those are not the girls we want to raise today. Those are not the young women we want to be today. So who defines the kichwa ngumu? Is it the man who decides umekuwa kichwa ngumu, now I'm bringing you another woman, ndio utulie uone si ati ulifika, I still have the capacity to bring in another wife. So really, I like saying a relationship is for two people. There's so many dynamics that play into it. But are you honest with yourself that you're doing what needs to be done to grow and nurture that relationship before rushing to start another relationship with the same attitude, with the same perspective? Because it's likely also to flop.
And abuko rushing. So Atemo, will that mean men would rush to get the first wife, and then probably they take maybe even a month knowing this wife, akukuwa na ile, courtship, actually knowing this person, and then when they actually now live with the first wife, they now start saying what some of these men from Kisii are saying, we are either quick chongumu, zawadi apokee vizuri, and then they realize hapana, so even ndio iko now, let me actually now go and look for a second wife. Will that be a case?
Well, it's because when I started, I talked about the environment that people are in. If that's what you have always had as the solution, if that's what everybody says around you, that when the relationship is not working for some reason, find somebody else, then you will be conditioned so. So you may never really think of, working it out. I love saying that in the past we used to repair things. Today people like to replace. And because before you would get to know that anything broken could be fixed. So you'd have a lot of fundis everywhere. Today you'll have shoes in your closet that could have gone to the fundi, but because you can afford a new pair, you just buy another one. You'll have 4 phones just because one phone had a little issue, so you don't fix it, you get a new one. We are impatient with process. And that is a very social conditioning that we get. So the way people think depends on the people who are around them. If I sit around men who keep on saying, if your wife is not listening to you, get somebody else, I most probably will go that direction. If I sit around people who say, if she's not listening, have you listened to her? I may take a very different approach. So again, this is how these things normally will sneak into our thinking, our mindset, our mentalities, the people that we are with. And when we're exposed to different, we begin to think different. Because you'll get somebody else who has been married probably 30 years. It's not that it has been rosy all the way. They've had to learn certain things along the way. When she's talking about love languages, of course, some of those things, they were defined later. You ask a generation that is in their 50s and 60s, they didn't know anything about love languages. They got to know that there are certain things somebody appreciated, but they did not understand what love language was.
Later on.
Those are things that are becoming more and more spoken about right now. But generally, an African man would think that his love language is what he provides. So whenever a woman would complain, he would say, but I'm taking care of you. I'm taking care of the kids. If you ask the older generation, you'll hear that a lot more, that, I took care of you, I took care of the kids, what else do you lack? They thought that meant love. And the generation of the older women as well, they settled in for that. They were okay with that, as long as the man takes care, as long as he provides. So they wouldn't leave. Now, another generation rose in which wanted more than that. The challenge, though, is, Stanley, your generation of men is both traditional and modern at the same time, because you have been raised by traditional men, and then you're living in a modern world. And you will keep on finding that you become traditional or modern depending on circumstances. There are things you will not accept as a man and think traditionally and feel, I am the man of this house. So you've gone back to the traditional man. When it comes to decision making and certain things, then there will be the space again where you are this modern man. Those things are raising conflicts. Women have had progressive development over time, generationally. Men haven't. They have had conversations about how they relate, how they work, who they are. over generations.
Having for those changes for both men and women. Now my question would be in the same train of thought. If the man and the woman stayed, let's say for like 2 years, they were dating for like 2 years, and so he's dating maybe to be the first wife.
Right.
Would this lower the chances of this man looking for a second wife? In the other case where maybe this man dated the chick for, let's say, 3 months, and then they got in, will that now raise the chances of this man looking for a second wife?
It wouldn't. It would just make his first decision better. Like if they dated for 2 years, then probably he would know what he's getting into. And he would make the decision whether he wants to go in or not. He would understand the risk that is involved. But if he is the kind of person who won't fix things, even if you dated for 7 years, you're still going to face challenges in that relationship. And you're going to understand that everybody's changing. As you grow, you're changing your perspectives, your views, your view of life, your priorities, your desires. So the woman you marry at 25 will be a very different woman when she's 30. Even if you dated her from campus from 20 to 25, when she gets to 30, she may not be that girl that you met. And these changes may not sit well with you. These changes may blindside you. So if your only way of recourse is then to get somebody else, then even if you dated for 10 years, you will get somebody else. I mean, people will get a second wife after being married for 20 years. That 20 years, this is not dating. This is living with somebody in the same house. But then the changes that are coming make the person begin to feel, I can't cope, or they can't fix it. So I don't think it is the longevity of the dating or how well you know somebody, and you really can never say that you know somebody very well because you're also changing within it. Whom you were at 25, very different from whom you were at 35. You may just find your partner at 35 beginning to, you thought they were introverted, then they become this very extroverted person. You may have thought they love to stay indoors, and suddenly they want to tour the whole world and they want to go on solo vacations. They don't even want you there and they have no issue with you. They're discovering themselves. If you are not learning this person constantly, continuously, observing them, there will be cracks. So the longevity, it is good just for you to be able to predict the risk, but it will not change your decision making.
That's very true. Wanjiru, in a world where women really denounce polygamy out here, but many of us are being kept, are we really honest?
Good question. And that's why I talked about being honest with yourself. It's time to be vulnerable. I think I agree with a lot of things that are culturally grounded, and then it's been like that, a generation after another, and then these things are not talked about, they're not addressed. While at the same time, that is what the kids being born into that are being exposed to. The environment. So you might expect them to act differently, but they won't, because what they know and they have seen work and is right is different. It's the same case for relationships, because there's a lot of people say if it's not broken, why fix it? And we're from talking about fixing and replacing. At what point do you choose yourself and decide that I am not happy? You could be happy. So the honesty part is not necessarily really external. I would say it's more internal. Because even when you talk about dating, the time, the period, I would like to look at it as a matter of quantity over quality. There are people who date for 5 years and they're not real with each other. And then you start spending time under one roof, and that's why shows like Who the Bleep Did I Marry are really getting hits, because you're like, my God, this is what is happening in my life. I have been with you, Stanley, for 5 years, and then in the 6th year, we're married, and I'm seeing a totally different Stanley. So what happens in addition to the changes, to the growing, because growth is paramount.
Who thinks Stanleys are good?
You're fetching information, you're growing, which is very good, but there are things that form who you are that were with you all along. But were you vulnerable in the dating stage to really show this is who I am, this is what you're getting into. Sometimes I like being a bit naughty. Can you handle that? Sometimes I'm hard-headed, or will you just play it cool until there's a ring, and then you're like, now I can bring all my demons out. And then you start wondering what has happened. It was there all along. You were just not real with each other. You could date for a year and be very intentional about who you are as a person, because a relationship is not, I'm not coming to complete you, you're not coming to complete me.
Yeah.
You need to be a whole complete human being and the other a whole complete human being to form a complete relationship. Otherwise, there will be cracks. The cracks, it's like the way when you have a wound and you're just by yourself. When you start, the smell just attacks you or affects you. But if someone else is introduced into your space, this smell gets to them. It's not their smell, but it's affecting them and now affects the relationship. So when you ask, are we honest with ourselves? That's a good question. And what I would say is you need to be honest with yourself. It's not a matter of, are you number one, number two? It's a matter of, is it something you're choosing and you want and you're happy doing it, or is it a trend? Or is it you think it's easier being a second wife? I hear a lot of things about the responsibilities of a first wife and the second wife. And Sage talked about how number twos, instead of having a side chick, why not just, pull her over and make her an actual wife? So some girls are out there maybe thinking, maybe it's easier to be a second wife. But maybe the minute you get into the space of a wife and you're no longer the chick he flies out and goes hiding with, are you certain those dynamics are not going to change? And will he also not get bored with you and wonder, maybe I need another side chick? So will he just transform that into a third wife? Or where does it end?
And on that, because we talk about the quantity of time here. So for the man, he's in his first relationship. So what period of time should he be in that first relationship so that he can consider, let me get a second wife? Let's say Leo, maybe even after Valentine's, they had a beautiful marriage. Should he be thinking about a second wife next year? Or what's the period of even thinking about a second wife?
Should is a very, I think, final word to use, like, how long should? Or
maybe how long can he?
Unless you're accustomed that way, like the way we are talking about some cultures.
And you were told environment.
Yeah, unless your culture is that way, you're like, I'm getting one in 2 years, like the way you plan your career or your business. In 2 years, I need to start wooing another one who now becomes my, unless you're really, really accustomed, and that's your DNA, maybe could apply. But as long as it's someone you've gone through a process and getting to a sober decision of, now I'm bringing you into my life officially as my wife, as my husband, it's criminal. I would say it's criminal to already be sitting there and already saying, aya, huyu nimewai, so let me just sit around and then get to the next. I wouldn't look at it that way. It's not even fair. Do they even know? That's the other question I would ask. When a woman, if I'm getting into marriage with you as the first wife, do you know my preferences? Do you know that I would be okay or not with you bringing another wife? Or will it now be solely a man's decision? I'm the one marrying, I'm bringing another wife. If you're not okay with that, there is the door. Is that kind of the dynamic? So do you know that I would be okay or not? Have we had a conversation that, by the way, here are the deal breakers. You try bring me another wife, we are done. I'll leave you with that wife.
But Sijil's talk about people change. I mean, your deal breaker when you're 25 might be different when you're 35.
That's true. That's where growth comes in and continuous conversations.
Right.
You continue. You talked about learning, and there's also unlearning. You thought you knew this about this person, and don't start now slapping them or reprimanding them because you are not like this. Why do you want me to be at 40 how I was at 30? there are different things I've been exposed to, experiences again that form your perspective. You are not maybe even a mother, you become a mother, I hear you start looking at things differently. So how has that changed me as a woman, as your wife? Pay attention, have a conversation, communicate. Otherwise, I could be saying, well, I'm too tired, maybe you need to bring me a helper. But until I actually say, don't assume, I think now this one is becoming less, she's not paying too much attention to me, let me go bring another one. I think it needs to be a conversation.
Okay.
Yeah.
CJ, let's talk about protection. What we've had in Kisii is that this is entirely a man's decision. You know, that's how, according to the men we've heard from. And I know, according to the Marriage Act, that if you get married, you know, in a Christian marriage or a civil marriage, then your husband cannot really get a second wife, you know, legally. But in a customary marriage, that can happen. So the position of the church, do you guys enlighten your, you know, congregation? Are there classes? Are they informed? Because there's a lot of ignorance in these settings.
I think, well, you know, one of the people from Kisii, I think he must have been the first person, he said it depends on whether the church that somebody is in does allow that. Because different organizations go by different rules as well, whether they call themselves churches, different. Some of them will go into covenants that were old, and they will say there are people in the Bible who had 2 wives or 3 wives, and so within their settings, they may allow that. A bit rampant in the southern parts of Africa as well because of the mix between culture and religion, so you will find that. So I think in a space that somebody comes into, they will have certain specific teachings to get to know that in this place, this is what we believe. In this other place, this is what we believe. So it is, again, very relative in where somebody goes to. For example, for the Muslims, it's obvious, it's given. But even among those who are called Christians, which is a very broadly used term, whenever people say, you know, Kenya is over 80% Christian, it's a very broadly used term. It's a conglomeration of so many beliefs and stuff. Within that, you will also find there are religious organizations, I prefer to call them that, that will take up certain things, a mix of African culture and probably what they feel is suitable for them, even from the Bible. But there are those churches that then will strictly be the one man, one wife. And the people will know it. And that's probably why then you begin to have the things of, you know, the side. Because the person knows they can't have this person legally and openly. That's why they will hide it. If it was acceptable everywhere, then you wouldn't even be having issues of a side chick at all. It would be legal, it would be open, it would be something that nobody's embarrassed about. You want to relate with this person, you just begin to relate with them. But because they know that there are certain standards that have been set, that's why they will hide it. And that's why we will even have the conversation on whether or not we should be having a second wife, because it is common knowledge that in strict Christian circles, it is one husband and one wife, male and female.
Right. I'm taking a look at a couple of comments here. I'll start with Clash says, better be single and enjoy my life. And Joki Wamariara, never can be me. But then there's an interesting one here, which I feel whatever you're saying earlier, you're answering to what he's saying. He's called Pianist Athanash Felixide Kilonze, a very long name. So he says, first, what's the difference between second wife and mpango wa kando? Which I feel like we talk about when it comes to the whole legal space. But then the second one is a conversation that they love to us to touch on. And again, so who is better than between the two? Because now hapa ndio inaanza sasa because now you have the first one.
Right.
The man brings in the second one. So whatever you give the first one, you have to give it to the second one. If it was a very nice house somewhere in Kilimani, the second one should the second one also be getting a very nice house also in Kilimani, if it's a very nice, Mercedes-Benz and everything, if it's a Range Rover, if it's a nice car, should the second one also be getting that one? Should it be an equivocal, unconditional love for both of them? And again, can a man even achieve to love two women unequivocally? I'll start with this, CJ.
One time I walked into a certain space and there was this lady, it was around the political season, and she was vying. And I had her say that she would never want to be a first wife. And mostly because of what Wanjiru was talking about, the responsibilities. She said because of her life and her schedules, she would never want to be a first wife, but she would want to be married. She wanted to have a man, but retained her freedom. And so even as we talk about whether that is just a man's decision, I don't think it is. There are actually women who would prefer, but because of the conversations around society, they can't really come out and say, I'd prefer to be a second wife, because they do not want the backlash. And when it comes to relationship matters, nobody fights a woman like a woman. So the conversations around women may probably not make them even have those conversations properly. If you were single, you're a threat. You're single, you're relating with somebody, even just a colleague, people will be feeling like you want to snatch their husband and stuff. So there's a way that has been really demonized that people then will learn how to fit in and speak what is politically correct. But there are those who would really want to just have somebody who gives them their freedom. They do not want to be there cooking for anybody every day, washing every day. They feel they need their space. See, we have a very different generation right now, and that's just the reality. It's not like our mothers who would take pleasure in serving the whole day and the whole night, and it didn't matter where this man was or what he did, and they would cook and they would clean and then take care of the children and be there. These girls want their freedom. They want to fly to Maldives. They want to be everywhere and still have somebody when they need this person. And sometimes they don't want to be choked. They want to have their space. So some of them then are feeling that that is the kind of arrangement that would work for them, where they have somebody just for the sake of knowing that they have somebody, and when they need to have any emotional attention, financial support, physical intimacy, they have one place to go to, but they don't want this person in their space all the time. So it is also creating a whole different thing, because now then even the women are coming after the men. And they're saying, I don't mind being here. I don't even want to come in and be the first. I don't want to be in that space. I just want to be here. And if it means I'll have a child with you, and then you just take care of us, I'll be fine. I don't even need you to come in and stay with us. We can have kids and just raise us. So this conversation is not just a man conversation. It has turned. It has switched because of we're also exposed to a lot of things out there. We also have magnified the element of freedom and personal space. And it's also coming back to us and eating into relationships as well. Whether you want to have the same person in your space every day, consulting with them over everything, talking about everything with them, you bring in your 50%, they bring in their 50%, you can't make your own decisions. Those are dynamics that have also changed. So I'm trying to get back into your question.
The 50-50, because you say the second wife will come in and say, just give me my space.
Yeah.
So now will that mean that for the second wife, she won't mind and the same kind of love that the first one is getting, as long as she has her freedom?
So these things depend on what Wanjiru talked about, the love language, how somebody appreciates things. You'll find that maybe even the first wife may not even be somebody who wants all the flashy stuff. Then you find the second one loves gifts, loves to be lavished, or you find one of them really wants a high life. The other one really doesn't care, as long as they are in this relationship. So you can't even do the equality even with your own kids. You can't, because tastes are different.
Yeah.
You can't say that, I've got 4 boys, I'm buying all of you blue T-shirts. You'll find one of them won't wear that T-shirt. One will be like, why didn't you give me the money so that I buy my own T-shirt? I didn't want a T-shirt, I wanted a shoe. Yeah. You have to relate with people as individuals with personal tastes and preferences and getting to know them. So that arrangement doesn't even work, because the needs that somebody has may be very different from the other person's needs. The reason why one person is coming into a relationship is different from why another person is coming in there. So it's a very technical, difficult space to be. The men who try to get into that space, well, that's an extreme sport. It's not easy.
Your take on that as well? I mean, can we, at the end of the day, can a man achieve the 50-50 unconditional love for both the first wife and the second wife?
Well, being that I'm not a man, I'm not so sure they can. It's not, I don't think it's easy to divide your attention across 2, 3, whatever items or people equally. And that's why I support what Atemo has talked about. Just know what works for that person. But then again, there's a takeaway here of choice. Is it a choice? He's talked about people who are actually okay with it. And right there is the candidates now for those men looking for a second wife. So the power of choice is very important, because I think there are women also who fight it because they were not involved. You just felt like, I want a second wife, and you went for a second wife. But maybe if they were involved, they had a choice, a say in it, then it could be different. So there's also that. Is it something you really want? Is it something you can work with? Is it what CJ is talking about, that I just want to be here? I want to know I'm somebody's wife. I want to know where I go get, I have my man. We like saying my man. Well, yeah, I have my man, but I don't want to be the one with the missus even. Some don't even want, they just want to remain Miss Wanjiru Kaburu, full stop. But deep down, it's a private life. I know I'm somebody's wife, and there are obligations that come with it, and it's our arrangement. Is it something you have chosen? If yes, then you deal with it, work with it as it is, and every other circumstance around it is fine. But what I don't support is the feeling of the masculinity that, well, it's my world, it's my choice, I'm the one getting a wife. Am I not giving you everything you need? No, you're giving me an extra thing I don't need. That's a second wife. So it's a choice. If you're okay with it, fine. But if not, I think it's still possible to run a marriage of 2 people and enjoy the process of knowing each other, learning, unlearning, even fighting. Actually, fighting in relationships is advised. People are advised to fight because people avoid the fight. Then that thing sits in, and one day someone snaps. You wonder, what have I done? It is what you've not done over a period of time, and it's the small things. So enjoy the process of even fighting. When people talk about makeup sex is very sweet, there's actually a science behind it. That the fighting, if you are objective, again, about it, if every fight is objective, it carries with it an opportunity to draw you closer. That is, if you are real with the fight, if you are vulnerable with the fight, not sugarcoat or run around, you're not even facing the actual issue why you are fighting in the first place. But if you're objective in fighting, I actually advise couples to fight a bit more. No punches, but just disagree a bit more, because in the disagreeing, you get to know what works, what doesn't work. And then accept your 2 individuals. You're not even born of the same mother. Even people born of the same mother are not the same. They don't look at things the same way. Yeah. They don't feel the same way about things. So it's okay also to agree to disagree on matters. And that doesn't mean you no longer love each other. Or you cannot be in that relationship and have a beautiful union. So yeah, it's okay to fight. It's okay to disagree. But be honest and open with yourselves and with each other about it. And then it becomes a nice roller coaster, and you enjoy the process. He talked about people not enjoying the process.
All right. CJ, let's talk about this woman. you see that this lady who says that, you know, she wants her freedom, she wants to get married as a second wife. And I'm seated here thinking, we've seen marriages, you know, that have worked for people who are in the political space. A good example is our colleague, I like calling her our colleague, the current Githunguri MP, Gathoni wa Mushomba. Her marriage she has a beautiful marriage. It's in the public domain. And you can see the work she puts in to, like, for example, she says 6 p.m. has, you know, the moment the clock strikes 6 p.m., she's out. Whether it's campaign season, whether she's going back home to her family. So I'm wondering, is it more of a self-esteem issue and thinking maybe you're not deserving of, you know, one man?
Not sure whether it is a self-esteem, could be, but it is also just how somebody is built up, whether they want to show up like that. Sometimes it's a thing of whether I want to give myself like that. So you see, you're talking about a case where somebody will be going home every day, 6 p.m., because of their values, what they feel are priorities, the vision they have for their family, and they feel that is so important for her that she would want to do that daily. Then there's somebody else who may not feel like they want to do that daily. Doesn't mean it's right, but again, you've got to understand their perspective, that is exactly what they don't want to do. They don't want to be leaving meetings and opportunities, in quotes, to be going home every day at 6. So they want to retain this element of freedom. You see, I said that we really pumped up the message of freedom without knowing how it would come back and bite us, that there wasn't quite much of a balance. Most of the time, people come from one extreme and go to the next extreme, swinging like a pendulum. And when issues, for example, of the women empowerment were coming up, way back, 70s, the most famous being the 85 Beijing conference and stuff, it was supposed to medicate something. It was supposed to treat something. But then sometimes you've got to know the side effects of that medication as well. Because then it went on, and even within religious spaces, you would rarely see people, women who were really pushing hard into success and having families at the same time. I was conducting, still on it, a research for a thesis. And across the globe, whenever women are going up the ladder, the first thing that will suffer is their families. And that is not just an African problem. So you have a lot of resignation of women who are in top management across the globe. At some point, the family will suffer. So mostly they will resign to get back. If they value the family, they will resign to get back into the family. That balance has never really been drawn. So whether this woman is just raising a child by herself or she's married, so there's some people then who feel they really want to go for their careers. And they do not have the balance to then bring together the career and the relationship. When Wanjiru talks about some even do not want to have anybody else's name, you ask why? Because they built a brand that they do not want to be jeopardized by a relationship, whichever way. So they're trying to manage their risk. So while we were trying to medicate and take care of one thing, we did not look at the whole ecosystem and how that would affect us. So now we have this breed that has come up thinking in a particular way. Then we say, well, we were just trying to empower you in terms of career and economically, but you still need to think as a traditional woman on this side. And they're saying, no, I don't even know how a traditional woman looks like. So part of this is a creation that we have had as well, while we were trying to correct certain things that were wrong. But then it looked like we threw out the baby with the bathwater. So that thing of going back at 6 may be the reason why somebody else does not want it.
So to cure that, Kaburu, because I mean, this woman, she's reached, she's probably maybe 45, she's a career woman. But then, deep down she'd know, back in the family, I'm not really present as much. So will that mean that now most women would prefer to give the green light to have, ambie mzee, fine, mimi najua sitakuwa, lakini nimekupea ruhusa. go and look for a second wife.
Ruhusa, that term really icks me in relationship. Permission.
Permission. But I'll escape that and go back to choice. Even when we talk about, he has rightfully said, some feel that they are neglecting and they come back to me because they feel that they need to focus more on the family. Now that's scenario one, perfect. Then there's the other scenario where a man says, haupatikani, you're not at home, kids are suffering, our marriage is suffering because you're out there doing good stuff or just working. I can work for both of us. That's another scenario. Let's assume this, in the second scenario, the woman neglects a career they have been building to come and stay with the kids and take care of the husband. Do you think this will be a happy woman while doing that? Because I like to look at it as you transmit who you are in every interaction. Imagine a Bita Wanjiro raising kids and cooking every day at home because they have been forced back at home with the traditional analogy that the best place for a woman is at home and taking care of the kids. And the other woman in scenario one who felt, well, this is a very tricky season of my kids. Maybe they are the nurturing, the stage where they really need their mother around and those kind of things. And they make a sober decision to pause, do this, and later revisit. So those are different scenarios with completely different results. One is a happy wife, happy woman doing it, and that energy is given into the house, into the home. I don't think there will be the wives complaining all the time so that you necessitate a second wife being brought because the home is not peaceful, right? But the other one could be back at home and create chaos because they're literally not happy doing it. And it's assumed that women should be happy taking care of the kids. Women should be happy to have children. But yes, let's also embrace we're in the days where it's okay for a woman to choose not to be a mother, to choose not to be a wife. You know, a matter of choice. But once you make that decision, a sober choice, then you systemize, you create a system around it. Because also, what are we telling the girls we are raising? That it's not possible for a woman to be a competent wife, mother, and a working person? Is that what we want to say? I don't think so. It's possible to create a system around how can some of the things work in my absence, in my line of work and career? How can certain things work at home when I'm not there? How can my marriage function? Because again, there's the introduction of when kids come along, some marriages suffer because the attention is divided. You see, all these are dynamics. So I think it's possible, or it's advised, or it would be nice to create systems around everything that calls to your attention with the understanding that in some seasons, some aspects of your life will need you more than others. So can these ones can you create an infrastructure around them to just pause or move smoothly and be okay with the process of it working that way in that season? Or can you not?
So typically, and because I really want to understand for this, so in the case where the second wife is present, naturally, is it the first wife that gave the green light? Or the man just went ahead and the first wife came to realize, oh, yuko?
Naturally, tuko wengi wenye wanataka kuuliza who are we? I mean, maybe the second wife wants it formalized and it's a promise you're making on the side that I'm going to, make it formal because you don't want to lose them as a man. But the problem is you're not having that same conversation with the first wife because when you legalize it or you bring her on board, there's no more hiding. You even risk losing maybe the first wife if for them it's categorical that you bring a second woman, they become your first because I'll be long gone. So a lot of men, I don't know if they usually have that conversation or they have the guts to have that conversation with the first wife about bringing a second wife. But now, you know, this is now a party of three. You can't just talk about it on one side and then not talk about it on the other side. Because bringing the second one means they will know each other and formally know you're my co-wife. Are you okay with it or not? So, challenge to the men. If you really feel that's the way you want to go, fine, but have the stomach and the guts and the to talk about it with both parties. Yeah.
CJ, we've really talked about the modern woman. You know, they can choose, their decision, freedom, whatever. This woman who finds themselves in this situation because maybe of circumstances, I'm a single mom, my finances. Like, for example, I'll give a story that's in the public domain. I won't mention names for legal reasons, but there's a second wife to a Mogi artist who passed away, who was narrating on YouTube. She has a YouTube channel, and she was, you know, narrating how this man changed her life. She was an M-Pesa agent. All of a sudden, she's driving a Mercedes-Benz. But she also mentioned that this man used to beat her. The time they went to Naivasha and she refused to iron his clothes because it was late at night, and she was trying to argue, to reason with him and tell him that she's gonna iron the clothes in the morning. He beat her up, and then she was saying this. I was thinking, maybe it's a problem with the men. Maybe a man who goes out there to look for a second wife, maybe he has something he needs to fix within himself. Because I also know that and you'll tell me if this is correct, you're told that when you're looking for a life partner, husband, wife, you should at least look for someone who has 80% of the qualities you're looking for. So I find it selfish when men have 80% at home and they still want to get this 20% out there. Si hata sisi tunataka normalize polyamory.
You see, now, let me start with that conversation of finding the 80%. I think that has also kept a lot of people out of relationships because they come with this list and you'll tell guys, have a list and then see whether this person ticks the boxes. And sometimes this person's qualities do not exist in your list, but they are good people. And so because you came in with this list, you move away from something you could have worked on. And so a lot of people are single because of those lists as well. And a lot of people also married people that when they got into marriage with, they began to realize it's one thing to see these things on paper, because what do you really tick most of the time? They'll be talking about, he's working, he's this, the height, how he speaks, he takes me out. It's mostly externals, not really the soft skills and the values. Then you get in with this person and now that your checklist no longer is important. And you begin to live with the person, the real person. Then you begin to get things that you didn't think were in them. Maybe this lady, at the point when she met the man, having been deprived of certain things in life, that's what she was looking for. So her box had a man who has financial capacity, takes me out, buys me gifts, and that's what she will call change her life. If you ask her what changing her life meant, it's very material. But how did it change her emotionally? How did it change her mentally? How did it change her in self-belief? Because when this man brings in this to you, he's bringing in the Mercedes, he picked you up from being an M-Pesa agent, and he's putting you in a Mercedes and all of these things, there's a certain level of entitlement. He actually has then a God complex around him. Because you also know he picked you from the dirt and he brought you to where you were. So he will have certain expectations of you. And when this is a God, you have to worship. So when you say no to ironing at midnight, what exactly are you saying no for? Like, you owe me your life. That's the thinking this person has. You owe me your life. I literally brought you up here. And that's what some people will keep on saying, like, I give you everything that you need. What do you lack? So even if they don't give you attention, even if they're not emotionally present, even if they don't treat you with respect, even if they're not affectionate in their communication, they will keep on bringing up this thing. I give you everything. I take care of you. There are many women out there who would wish to live this kind of life. Do you know how many women would want to drive what you're driving or even drive? So if all you were looking for was a way out of poverty, then that's all you will see. And this person will never, ever treat you as an equal partner or even just a human being. So it's not really a man thing, because that can happen even when you're only married to one wife. Somebody may just have one wife, and if they think they met this woman, created them, formed them, breathed into them, then they will treat them the same way. And this is why it is important for everybody to have personal development. You've got to grow yourself into certain spaces where you can make certain decisions that are also beneficial to you. I was having a webinar the other night, and I've had to talk about it a bit more with some ladies. And I said, you see, whom you attract depends on how you show up. So you'll never see a lion, a single lion, attack a buffalo. He can't do that. He can't do that. He can't come after a herd of buffaloes. He can't do that. As strong as a lion is, there will have to be several lions, and probably you need to isolate the buffalo before you can come. But when you're an antelope, even a hyena that is passing will come after you. And I was telling these ladies, you got to grow yourself into the kind of person that not everything can come after you. And not everybody can come after you and treat you somehow. So they have to think about it.
So CJ, and a follow-up on that, as much as you've developed yourself to all that, but then now it is the first wife and the second wife. So who is likely to be respected more by the man and the society?
Well, it does depend. Again, you see, Stan, these things, they will go back again into cultural setups, social setups. So for example, if you were in a religious belief system where the president of Tanzania she's number 3. I don't think that she's mistreated at all. And I don't think that that started with her being a president. It is because within their circle, that is acceptable. So it is not something to be looked down on. But if you were in a space where this is not acceptable, then this person is sneaking in, then probably the number 2 will be looked down on by the number 1, or the number 1 will be looked down on by the number 2. This thing will mostly be between the 2 ladies. So the number 2 may say, you know, you were there, you weren't satisfying him, and I came in. I'm the one who makes him happy. Or the number 1 will feel like, look at you, you know, you came in through the back door, because it is not acceptable. But in spaces where the culture does not go against it, or the religious beliefs, it may not even be an issue. So those do depend on what kind of setup are you in.
Right.
If you are in a space where you believe in just having one, the introduction of another is going to destabilize the ecosystem. And even you will not be at peace.
Right. And just a reminder, back at home, you can always be part of this conversation, 0795045864. After credit, sahi ndiye. You call us live, 0795045864. Phone numbers are open. Call us live, 22047. But SMS, that is our SMS number. On Facebook, so the reason I was asking that bit of respect is what Langat Naomi says. So for me, hata kwa dawa second wife haihesabiki. Hata kwa familia wanakuona kama hufai. Hata kwa akili zetu tunajua second wife hana nafasi, amekuja tu kufunja ndoa za mwenzake. Yes. So I mean, we've so as much as there's the bit of depending on the whole culture and you know, and all that, but then even for this is the first and the second wife, does this bring competition among the two? As much as kuna moja ameko mahali, you know, in Nairobi, the other one is in Shags, or maybe even living around the same area. But does competition come in? The second wife would probably want to, you know, do things in a way, you know, to please the man and also the society and also even the first wife.
I would think so, because over and beyond knowing what they like and giving that to them, it's like having 2 kids with the same set of parents, or even in a single parenting setup. They want different things at different times. They want to be equal. There's always the fighting of one is being treated better than the other, even if it's not really the case. So at emotional, psychological, deep level, it's likely to end up being a competition. And I'm not so sure how the men are able to handle that. And I go back to the system. Is there a system, or how did that second wife come to be? Is it the case where CJ was pointing out that some have made it very clear, I just want to know you're my man. It doesn't have to be publicized. It doesn't have to be anything. And I'm okay. I actually came in the sense of what he has talked about, empowerment. We're in a season where it's important for women to have what is theirs, have something you call yours, so that your existence, your lifestyle is not dependent on the man, whether he's a pauper or a billionaire. It just gives you the satisfaction of knowing you mistreat me. It's not like the example of you can't stand being abused because you feel like you don't have anywhere to go, because literally this man made you. But you need to know that if he did that and CJ is right, is because there's something he expects. Nikikohoa unaitika, right? So the orientation around that is set up in that manner. But you as a woman, have you grown yourself even through that opportunity? Mm-hmm. Let's say there are good men who exist out here and they see something in you beyond a beautiful person. And they want actually to wife you, and they do all that for you. They buy that Mercedes, they keep you at home, your lifestyle. As a woman, do you take advantage of that to develop yourself? Maybe if what you had is the monetary, you didn't have is the monetary resource. Now it's there. Can you say, well, as you buy a Mercedes, pay for this cost for me? As you buy me a house, I've always wanted to venture into this kind of business. If you're a fashionista, fashion in itself is a line of business. So you as a woman, single-handedly, do you have a mind of your own? Do you have your own dreams that you can actually take advantage of? You know, the money is there, why not? Don't just use the money for the, things that he can decide, hii gari nilibuy, so if this is not going okay, I'll take the car, I'll take the house, and you're left exactly how he found you. Mm-hmm. So it's a challenge to the modern, even the older women, to just know that you are an individual besides being someone's girlfriend, someone's wife. Right. What are you making of yourself? And that's where, another day we were having a conversation and someone asked me how healthy boundaries. This is where I also talk about it's good to have the boundaries of what can you give up. Because there are people who give up all they are when they get into a relationship. So, and people start running, 10, you used to be this, you loved what? You were writing, now you're not. And reason, my mom just wants me to be That's where you gotta be able to set a boundary and say, spiritual nourishment is important to me. Fridays are for Kesha for me. We can talk about compromise. Maybe 2-2. We can do dinner if you feel Fridays work dinner, but you're not making me give up something that nourishes me, that forms part of who I am, that helps me to show up as a full, whole human being, happy human being, so that I satisfy you. So where do you draw the line without the fear? Because people are also loving with fear. People are into relationships, they're walking on eggshells. If I show this side of me, if I say this, if I don't say yes to what they're saying, I will lose the person. Well, mapema ndio best. Go ahead, lose the person so that you get the right person for. But then I mean, in such a conversation, you have your 3 of you here. There's a man and then the 2 wives. So again, as you're saying, unamwambia Fred in Yakesha. But then CJ, when even for let's say either the first or second wife, when they're having these boundaries, do you think about
the first wife, or maybe if you're the first, do you think about the second wife when you're drawing these boundaries again?
You know, it's very complex for the women when they come into those kind of spaces.
Yeah.
I think that the women who can get into polygamous situations have to be built up for that, literally. Because the things that when you was talking about, like the jealousy, and you were asking about that jealousy, competition, that need, then this person must have counted the cost emotionally. What if I'm going to need this man and he's not coming in? Even when you look at it from the traditional setup, the people who grew up in polygamous setups before, even in the old, they will talk about those kind of things. It wasn't even easy for the women in the past to live in those kind of spaces, because sometimes you want your husband to show up today and then he's now with another wife. You see him walking from his house within the BAMBA and he's walking to the other house. He's eating from there. He doesn't come and eat at your house. And those things were not even easier then, because they will break you. Nobody wants to be rejected. Nobody wants to be ignored. Nobody wants to be neglected. Nobody wants to be blue-ticked. That was the form of blue-ticking those days, where you set up a meal and then the man doesn't come and he goes and spends more time in another house. And even then, you'd still have all these issues of jealousy and fights and step-siblings having issues because now their mothers would pass bitterness down to them. And yet, that was a very controlled society where we were not a speak-up society then. So you can imagine how it is right now. So it's not even easy for any woman to come into that space. Then she has to have counted the cost and known that there will be days when you will literally feel, and very openly, that this person is on the other side more when you need him. This is where sometimes you get drama, even from the baby mama drama, where she will feel neglected and then call someone and say, the baby is sick. I hear that's what they do.
You hear.
I've had people say, you know, they've had very dramatic calls. They'll be told, you know, they'll think that the child nearly died or is nearly dying, only for them to go there and find there's really nothing. But it's now the jealousy being played out either through the child or something. So when a woman is consciously getting into that space, especially now for the second, because the first one may not know. She comes in knowing this is my man and gets in, so she did not sign up for that. Later on, probably, to make it legal though, the law requires that you get her consent. So if she's given the consent, then she has to also know that she's going to have days when she will feel that the other person is better. Now, they have to have a lot of conversations, her and the other person. And maybe if she's giving the consent, then they have had enough conversations for her to understand that the other person is not taking her place or something. But generally, it's difficult for two women to share attention from the same person. It's just difficult. Even a mother and a daughter, it's just difficult for them to share attention from the same person. So if you know that you are the kind of person that feeds on attention a lot, don't even try to get into that space. If you need a lot of affirmation, don't try to get into that space. If you're the kind of person who will be thinking about quality time every time, don't even get into that space. Because you're coming in and this person already has an existing ecosystem, and now you want to draw them out of it. And that's not what they had in their mind. They probably were thinking, and in some cases, somebody might be thinking, well, I've been with this woman for quite a while, and now I need some sparks probably in the bedroom. So he goes for somebody who's younger. So that's the only idea that he has in that space. He's not leaving his first wife. This one has created with him everything, his business, his career, raised children, and he thinks that's good enough, and maybe just one area is not working. So he's looking for somebody else to take care of another area. Or
the 20%.
or now he's looking for somebody just to show up with in public. You know,
Wow.
Wow. Really?
he's looking for somebody who will, the trophy now. But he really, really, really depends on the other one for everything else. So when you're coming in, you must also ask yourself, what is your role? See, when people get into relationships, and especially in marriage, you nearly are sitting an interview. And you've got to understand what your role is. Because if you don't get that, then you will fail. There are KPIs in marriage. There's a whole JD. There's a man who, when he is marrying you, even in a monogamous situation, when he's marrying you, he's thinking of, I've found a cook, I've found somebody to clean, I've found somebody to take care of my children. And it may be, as Wanjiru said, maybe you don't want to have children, but this is his idea. So when you say no to children, then he begins to think, I need to have somebody else who will bear children for me, because you did not have the conversation of what this role means to your partner. There's a woman who, when she's thinking about a man, she's thinking about a provider. So if you come in, Stan, and say, you know, nowadays people share 50-50, that's not what she was signing up for. She wanted a man who fully takes care of her so that she can stay at home and watch Netflix the whole day and look beautiful in the evening and be there for you, and you have dinner and quality time. So I think these are conversations that people should have in any construct of any relationship, even when it is monogamous. What is this person actually looking for in a wife or in a husband? Because eventually those will influence later decisions.
Wanjiru, CJ is talking about it being difficult a lot, and we have the same about people who are married anyway. You know, marriage is difficult, it is work. I'm not sure I'd want to come into a situation where I have to fight for my marriage and work on my marriage and also work on my relationship with the first wife. Also, we've seen, you know, even like wives who are doing really well for themselves. Like, for example, I'll mention this because it's in the public domain and it's in court documents. The Nakuru Senator, Tabitha Karanja, we've seen her being frustrated by her co-wives, honestly. You know, they want her properties. Is it really worth it?
Well, who decides? Who decides? For me, if you're asking me as Wanjiru Kaburu, I would say it's not. It's not worth getting yourself into a situation who's JD. You can't. I like that, by the way, because it's true. What's my JD in these? And sometimes we say very...
Wanjiru, let me interject.
Sorry.
I hear Joseph from Thika is on the line. Hi, Joseph. Joseph, habari?
Mzuri sana.
Hey, how are you? Tuongeleshe. Do you have a second wife? Tupe maoni. Uliza maswali.
No, actually I don't.
Okay. Talk to us.
So you see, this second wife debate is a very thin line. Because let me give you an experience that I had first. So I met a lady and we were good. But in the house, we used to live like bros. Because alikuwa kazi, na mimi nilikuwa kazi. But her job, alikuwa anatoka around 9 p.m. My job is an 8 to 5. But she got the job so that naache kukaa idle. So now we come to the house, mimi nimefika at the house around 6, 7, nimeingia. So she's not around. What do I have to do? I'm hungry. So tunapata nimeenda kwa kibanda, I get some skuma, I get everything, I come, I cook. She comes, finds nimepika, she eats. It's around 9, 10, shower, and maybe I'm doing my own things. Tumelala. In the morning, by 8, by 7, 6:30, we are all on the road. Sometimes in the morning she's in a hurry, anatoka mbele. Me, I'm there, I do my breakfast kidogo, and then I go. So we reach a time where it's like maybe a week has gone, and I realize I don't have clothes. They're all dirty. She's not around. What do you do? Get someone comes washes the clothes. She won't even know the clothes my clothes inaoshwa, and then I return. See, so there's a lady in glasses anasema, women need to own things, do this, have things of their own. That is very good. But women should accept the responsibility that comes with those things. See, even the Bible itself says that she was created as a helper for the man.
Jose, are you saying you were married to this lady or dating her?
We were married. Tuko nakaa naye kwa nyumba.
Okay.
So Jose, if there was a second lady mwenye juu yeye anarudi kwa hao saa 3 usiku.
Yes.
Now, if there was a second lady, would you feel like...
There was no second lady at that time.
Sorry?
There was no second lady at that time.
No, I'm saying, so nauliza if, sisemi alikuwa, I'm saying if angekuwa. If angekuwa, labda unaona angekusaidia, ease pressure yako.
That is not where I'm headed. At some point, you're like, hey, this lady is not there. No, tunaishi kama mabro. I come, mimi nifika wa kwanza napika, yeye anakuja anakula, tunalala asubuhi anaenda. Mind you, I do the bills. I pay rent, I do everything. She has her money is her money, my money is our money. You see? So ikafika at a point and like I met someone somewhere and we were talking and like, you know, I used to go there, spend the evening, come to my place at 9, we meet in my, and there is no problem. Me, I was happy. You see? So some of these things sometimes, you see, we have the, when it comes to having someone else, second wife, sometimes hizi vitu zinakuja na the culture that we are accepting. This is the Western culture, of course. Vis-a-vis our own culture. See, our own culture is very straight. See, you get that's why you even pay dowry. For the lady ndo akikuja anakam anakusaidia do this, so that the guy anakuwa na a peace of mind and kutafuta vitu alafu analeta kwa nyumba, you see. So it becomes easier. The culture we are in right now is we empower women. Ukienda kwa mjengo, you find there is a lady. Because tumesema ladies, also what a man can do, they can do. Nakuta there is a lady. Lakini what she is doing pale kwa mjengo, anachota maji. So at the end of the day, pale hivyo, anaitisha equal salary to the guy who is feeding the machine. This guy amekaa chini ya machine from morning to jioni, and they want the same salary. You see? So that empowerment sometimes brings these issues.
So asante sana Jose.
Okay.
Asante sana. Wanjiru, we had cut it short before we also listened to what the Kisii women are saying.
Well, I love him, Joseph, being very, upbeat about this. And it will go back to something CJ and I have addressed, conversation. So she went ahead and got this job. And it feels like Joseph agrees that it's important for this woman to have a purpose, to have somewhere she wakes up to go to every day. The problem is the strain it brought into the marriage, right? So did you have a conversation that, well, the job that I'm getting has this dynamic, so this is likely to affect us in 1, 2, 3 ways, and maybe to cover for this, maybe this is what, do you maybe need an arrangement with help? Because I believe that as a woman, there are things that naturally you should take care of, and I don't mean bend and clean the clothes. If you play the role of ensuring they are clean, then the clothes are clean. But there are also men who want you to do it yourself. And that's where we go back to the conversation of you want the 20%, right? If you are strict that I'm looking for a woman who cooking, I'm a foodie. I want to be able to have food of all types at any time in the house. And I honestly don't fit the bill. I tell you, by the way, I'm not so bad at cooking, but 2-3 days in a week is when I'll be in the kitchen cooking. On a normal day or a surprise, where I'll do it. You need to know this is what you're getting into. So don't expect when I'm there now, suddenly you want me to be. That's why people say casual statements like, si ungeoa chef. People start talking about those sentiments, but it's true. You need to know what you're getting yourself. into. So that you're not in it and wondering, this is not why I married you. This is not what I married you for. It's just something that can be avoided by having conversations, agreeing to disagree, and it's okay to say, I love you so much, but this is not gonna work for me, so let's not even get into the marriage stage. Let's not even, tusisumbue watu na ratio. This one is not going to work, so it was nice knowing you, all the best.
Peace.
Yeah, peace.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's listen into what Kisii women are saying. Alpha Kumbo spoke to a few women right there on this conversation. Tusikize, then we'll be back.
Kwa majina mimi naitwa Jeni Gekonge kutoka Kegati. Sasa Kenya nataka, yani Kenya mtu anafanya aolewe kama pipi wa pili. Kuna wengine wanapendanga wao pipi ya pili, hataki kuolewa kama pipi ya kwanza. Na kuna wengine wanapendanga yani kuna wengine wanaume wamekosa, naona waacha olewe. Saa zingine bwana anakudanganya, ana pipi. Sasa mnakaa labda mtaani, anakutanganya, ana pipi. Anakusaliza watoto wamekuwa wakubwa. Sasa wakikuwa wakubwa ndio sasa anakuja kukuambia kuna mwenzako. Sasa unasangaa mbona. Sasa kitu kingine wengi ya wanaume hawaendangi nyumbani. Hawaendangi nyumbani kwao, hawapeleki mapipi kwao, waende kuona. Sasa hiyo ndiye nafanya wanaoa yani sasa hiyo ndio nafanya unakuwa mke wa pili bila kupenda. Na kuna wengine wanapendanga kuolewa. Na utasapata huyu pipi wa kwanza hajawahi kupata watoto, hasai. Ndio mwanaume anaona wacha alete bibi ya pili. Na akileta bibi ya pili, huyo bibi na yeye anakubali, hasai.
Kitu ambacho ninachofanya mwanamke analoa bibi ya pili, labda maisha yalimkalia magumu, ama kuna watoto wenye wanamtarajia, labda mume alimwacha na huyo sasa amekubali kumoa bibi ya pili. Hiyo sioni kama kuna shida kwa kuolewa bibi ya pili. It depends na mwanaume kama ameamua kuoa bibi wa pili. Yeah. Kwa wengine pia kitu inachangia msichana kuolewa bibi ya pili, mahitaji pia yako juu na maisha pia yamekaa magumu. Sasa mtu inabidi atafute mtu ambaye anamsaidia kidogo.
Irini Mora, utaweza kupata msichana ameweza kuletu kwa hiyo poma pipi ya pili, utaweza kupata mama mkubwa apati watoto, mzee anaona poma yake itakuja kuharibika bila kupata pipi, anapata watoto. Sasa ndiye anaona wacha alete hiyo pipi ndiye saitie poma. Akileta hiyo pome akipata watoto, sasa na yeye anaitwa papa watoto, ndiye asikuje kukaa hivi achekelewa na wengine. Ni vizuri alete hiyo pipi ya pili ndiye asae. Na huyu pipi ya pili amfanya nini? Asimtarau, wapendane kama mama na mama.
Naitwa Beatrice Kwambuka Nyavuto kutoka Kisii Municipal Market. Sasa unachua mabenzi ana kinga hata kidogo. Ataweza kumuongeleza na kupenda na nitakutunza kama mke wangu. Tena nitaweza kukufanyia mengi. Hata nitakunulia samba, siwezi kuchukua kwa ile mke mkubwa. Naenda kukuchengea mbali uishi. Unajua wanaume wako na maneno mengi wanaongeanga. Saa zingine wanadanganya. Akidanganya mtu mpaka akimuleta kwa uzi, hapa amemshinda. Atamleta nyumbani. Najua watoto wengi hata akiwa watoto wanasoma shule. Wakiona mwanaume yako na pesa, anamfanyia kile chamba ambaye anataka, anampenda. Na sasa mapenzi ikiingia hata wakiona anaona hakuna shida itaenda kumpata. Ajui kama sita iko mbele. Sasa wanawake wengi kama watoto wasichana wanapenda pesa. Wanapenda mavazi, wapewe pesa waishi vizuri, ndio wanapenda zaidi. Hawajui kama wanatanganywa. Ndio sasa inakucha wanapendana, amemchukua kwa nyumba kwao. Mwanaume akimchukua kwake nyumbani na yule mke mwingine hako anamwambia hapana, wewe ndio nakupenda zaidi. Lakini hapo mapenzi hayawezi kuendelea mpaka mwisho. Si sana wanaendeleanga. Unachangia kuwa mke wa pili kwa sababu ya kutanganywa. Kama ni msichana ambaye anajisimamia vizuri, hawezi kuwa mke wa pili. Ataweza kusema wacha nitafute mpenzi wangu ambaye ni kichana kama mimi, tuoane tuishi na yeye.
Wanasema wanaume ni kidogo.
Hapana, hata angali ni kidogo. No. Hata wakisema wanaume ni kidogo si sana. Mwana msichana ambaye akukua anajisimamizia si vizuri aende kuwa mke wa pili. It is not good.
Right, that is sentiments from a couple of women from Kisii County, and I'm seeing we're really out of time up at Geshambi. So as much as we'll be getting the reactions, I'll start with you, Njiro. Are there any unique benefits? I mean, the last lady is talking about as a second wife, this is what she'll probably be bringing on board. But are there very unique benefits that as a second wife, you're bringing to the table?
I would go back to the point on the circumstances under which the second wife is being brought on board. One of our moms there has talked about labda mama wa kwanza akona shida ya kupata watoto. And it seems that it's an amicable decision for a second wife to serve that purpose. She has even said, bora asimdharau mke wa kwanza. So it also brings in the factor of the relationship. It does not become an issue of you could not do this, so I came in to do this. So it depends. When you talk of benefits, it depends on, is there a very critical need for that has been discussed, talked about, because there's also the option of adoption.
Yeah.
There are also couples that will agree, no, we are not bringing a third party into our relationship. Let's explore other ways of having a baby. So it's dynamics, it's conversation, it's what works for both of you. Because by the time you started this, you were two of you, unless it's culturally and in the religious organizations, as CJ has emphasized on that, this is expected of the man to get several wives. So when you're getting into it as a wife, number one, it's something, at any time, the man might come saying, let me introduce you to someone, and that becomes your co-wife. You necessarily maybe don't have a say in it, but there's people in that setup who also choose to stay with one wife. So the dynamics then at play are very different for different people. But I also support the last mom there who talked about msichana mwenye amejielewa, or, so why are you getting into it? It goes back to that. Are you using this man to maybe elevate yourself? Is it a question of, I need someone facilitating me for 1, 2, 3, and for some reason, I'm not getting my man, who I can just call mine, I'm okay being a second? Is it the dynamic of, as CJ as an example, someone is in a space where they don't want to have the back of the responsibility as the first wife, they are just fine being second wife. And there comes with its own JD, I suppose.
Yeah.
So it's a choice, it's a conversation, it's a decision that needs to be made. But for every, whether first, second, third, or whichever number of wife you are, you come as a person, and there are expectations in that. You have to understand if there are expectations you can meet or not, if it's a space you can thrive in. CJ disqualified me when he talked of affirmations, quality time. Don't dare get into that space. So I'm well advised. I'm not even gonna try. So know yourself. What is can work for you, can't work. And
speaking of being well advised, your final thoughts on someone who probably is thinking of either looking for a second wife, or a lady who is trying to flirt with the idea of maybe then as a kua. Your final thoughts.
Ask yourself why. Why? Answer that question very honestly with yourself. But just free advice, see where you are as a person. If you are an all person, because it doesn't matter whether you're number 1, number 2, you're given everything until you have grown yourself, loved yourself, embraced, and given yourself the graces even that are required in a marital setup, then you won't be able to extend the same to the other person. Right. Because I suppose it's not easy, whether number 1 or 2, it has its dynamics. So ask yourself why very categorically. You'd love to, make that decision or even think about it, but also be very in touch with yourself.
CJ, your final thoughts again, an advice to both the three parties. A man looking to have a second wife, the first wife looking to maybe give a green light or not, and maybe a lady hoping to maybe be the second wife.
Well, I was hoping you didn't ask me for advice, because those are very personal decisions. But as Wanjiru said, you know, whichever way, whether it is the fast, the monogamous, or whichever, it will take work to get it done. So you have to ask yourself, any relationship you're coming into is made by whoever is in there. It's the relationship doesn't make the people make the relationship. And so do you have the capacity? Are you cut out for the job? Are you able to handle whatever you're getting into? Emotionally, financially, mentally, spiritually? How will this affect other people, including children, including the larger community? So it's not just what you want, then it is how it will sit, and for generations as well. So you've got to think through it, count the cost, ask yourself whether you're actually able to do that, and whether that is something that you would think to do 5 years from now, or it is just circumstances at this point, whether it is something that if your circumstances currently changed, you would still make the same decision. Because when you make decisions, you have to ask yourself, when you're going to bed, you've got to ask yourself, if the circumstances were different, would I still make the same decision? And if somebody else was in my position, would they make the same decision?
Right.
That is when you're making difficult decisions. So if you think that if you had a bit more money, you wouldn't get into it, then probably you won't stay in it.
Thank you.
Right.
CJ Temo, life coach, consultant, as well as a communicator. Wanjiru Kabiru, thank you very much. Transformational coach, communication and brand positioning strategist, as well as a corporate MC. Asanteni sana, we've learned a lot. Kashambi, I've not forgotten my question. Tukianza, will you be?
Do
not dare. But then,
I have a few comments from our viewers on Facebook. I think I'll read a small. So, Chacha is saying, just taking notes. Mayo is saying, I will give space to that second and be single. I need a third one. People, it's really a conversation. Remember, we can still have this conversation online. Keep giving us your opinions.
Always. This conversation continues online, TV47 KE, on Facebook, 2204.